Hello, college football fans, and welcome to the 100th special episode of College Football Throwdown. I'm your co-host, Alex Schmitz. Today I'm joined once again in person by my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Hello, Husker fans and college football fans, and 100 episodes. Holy cow.
I know, right? And joining us over the interwebs today is uncle/brother AJ Schmitz.
Hello, everyone. And congratulations, guys, on your 100th episode.
Thank you.
That's right. Yes, we started this sucker back up in 2015, summer of 2015, and we've been doing them pretty consistently this whole time. So, yeah, we've finally made it up to 100. Pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And to commemorate this special episode, we decided that since there's not a ton positive to talk about the Huskers right now, we're going to rewind time a bit and talk about the 1995 season, and specifically the 96 Fiesta Bowl game between Nebraska and Florida that proved why this team was one of the greatest, if not the greatest, of all time. So, as we dive into that, of course, I was born in 1993, so I don't have very distinct memories of this, even though apparently I was on Dad's lap while he was watching the game. But, of course, in the build-up to that game, there was the 95 season in which Nebraska played three different teams that were all ranked in the top 10. And just in general, the offense was just so crushingly dominant, and the defense swallowed up all these teams. You know, you have scores like against Arizona State of 77-28 or 57-0 against Missouri. Even against number 7 Colorado, 44-21, you know, so AJ and Dad, you guys obviously lived through that season and got to enjoy the weeks of dominance as it played out. So can you reminisce a bit about what that was like?
Oh, well, the thing is that what really made that season unique was
Hang on a second there, Pete. Aren't we forgetting something?
Oh, the beverage.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. So anxious to get in the meat.
We are, yes. So, AJ, why don't you tell us what beverage you're drinking, although I have no doubt what it is.
Michelob Ultra, as always.
Michelob Ultra. All righty. And Alex is drinking just a simple, standard light beer from Miller, the light beer of choice of many Americans. And I am drinking one of the last of my Schell's Brewing Company Firebrick Vienna-style amber lagers. And I just really love this beer. And it's from August Schell Brewing Company, which was founded back in 1860, the second oldest brewery in America. So cheers, fellas, and here we go. Okay.
All right. Yes.
Now it's appropriate.
Yes. Thank you for reminding me, AJ.
I'm thirsty.
Yeah.
Me too, actually.
So the thing is that what was so unique for me anyway, relative to this this particular season of 95 and then into that 96 Fiesta Bowl was the fact that after many years of being an avid fan of the team, they were struggling, but right on the edge of, winning a championship. Then finally they did it in 94. And I so distinctly remember that experience of when we won that first one. But then to have the whole offseason in which we understood that we had a lot of talent coming back. And we had a tremendous amount of young talent that was emerging during that 94 season. And then, so I think Nebraska had this quiet confidence. Certainly their team did, and that showed throughout the season. But even among the fan base, there was this quiet confidence that we thought we had a chance to be really special with Tommy Frazier coming back and Brooke Behringer, and just depth and talent everywhere. And we just needed our offensive line, which lost 4 of its 5 starters to graduation. That was the one big question mark. But, having seen a lot of the younger kids play, because we had dominated so much in 94, we knew we had talent there. It wasn't like these people were unknowns, right? Today's day and age, we're starting so many freshmen and sophomores and redshirt freshmen on the offensive line. It's a very different picture than when you were able to watch a season and see guys who were a backup, but they would get 20 snaps a game, 30 snaps a game as the backup. So you knew what they were capable of. And they weren't afraid to put their whole second-team offensive line in the middle of a game. And I don't know that anybody does that anymore, So that was what was unique about that. And then to actually watch it unfold, and I think they were even better than I thought they were going to be. And then, of course, leading up to the game, there was so much hype, and there was all this, acrimony, I would say, about how great Florida's offense was. And really, Nebraska's old, ploddy style was kind of poo-pooed in the whole build-up to that game. And yet Nebraska fans and the Nebraska team obviously knew what they had. And then they came out and just showed it. And it was awesome. What's your thought, AJ?
That what you brought up earlier about the offensive line, that's what I mostly remember about that, was that to replace 4 guys, that's tremendous. To be able to replace 4 guys and dominate the way they did, that was super impressive by the offensive line coach. Well, I can't remember his name right now, Pete. You'll remember.
Milt Tenneper.
Tenneper. That's what I was going to say. And then I thought, no, that wasn't. But anyway, he did a heck of a job bringing those guys along, like you said, in 94 and even the year before that, bringing them along. And for them to be as dominant as they were against pretty much every team they played, that's really something. I mean, that was a tremendous thing. And again, like you'd mentioned, going into the game itself, there was very few pundits and fan bases that gave us a prayer to win that game and to come out and dominate it. And even though the score was large, it wasn't even that close.
You're right, AJ. As we were watching it last night, in fact, there were a couple of things. Number one, one of Florida's scores, they scored 24 points, but one of their touchdowns would have, in this era of video review, been called back because the guy was out of bounds. Right. But at that time they didn't have review, and so it was called a touchdown, and it was very close. But if you had the benefit of video review, even the commentators, the old UCLA coach Donahue was the
McAfee.
No, Donahue was the commentator, and he said, "Well, they might have got away with one." That was his comment because there was no reviewing it, so it was what it was. So frankly, they didn't get that particular touchdown. And then having Christian Peters 2 points pulled off the board, which was completely absurd. You remember at the end of the game on that. And then we took a knee on the last play of the game, and poor Sims, our 15 running back, who was who got that great run near the last play of the game, and he lunged to get to the goal line and missed it, and we were on the half-yard line, and then they sent Terminator in there, and Matt Turman just took a knee for the last play of the game, and so we easily could have scored there, and it would have been 73 or so to 18.
Actually, so the final score of the game was, of course, 62-24, but if all those things play out as Dad just described it actually would have been 71-18.
Yes,
so
71-18.
Even more of a lopsided score. And then if that had been the case, that would have been the largest point spread of a number 1 versus number 2 ever, I think. The one that superseded us was the 1945 Army versus Notre Dame game, where Army won 48-0. So that's the most lopsided one, apparently.
Interesting.
But yeah, it was fun for me to watch the different pregame stuff because, Dad, you sent me some YouTube videos of what the pundits were saying at the time. And there were, I would say it was probably more like 60-40. Like there were still plenty of people who were choosing Nebraska, since we were the defending national champions. But it was funny, like, Lee Corso thought it was a really close game, and so he thought the difference in the game would be the fact that we were playing on natural grass, natural turf
for the first time.
Right, for the first time this season, even though Tom Osborne said, we practice on grass regularly, and we won on grass last year in, our game against Florida State. So, we don't really think it's a big deal. Like, Tom Osborne and the players were all like, we think they're making a big deal out of nothing here. And that's definitely what it turned out to be. It didn't seem like the grass slowed them down at all in the running game.
You met Miami there.
Oh, Miami last year? The previous year?
Oh, the year before.
Okay. My bad. In the
right, Pete?
95.
I didn't hear the comment, so I missed it a little bit.
I was talking about...
He was talking about the year before and beating Florida State.
You
beat
mean
Miami?
Yeah. When we almost beat Florida State. You mean the 18-16 loss?
No, I was referring to the 95 game because I thought that was Florida State. But
it's Florida.
The point was when we won the championship the previous year, that was also on a grass field.
Oh, right.
Clearly we won.
So. Got it.
But that was against Miami.
Yes, that was against Miami.
Yeah.
Okay. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. And it's worth noting, just in terms of the dominance, like I mentioned, we played 3 different top 10 teams over the course of the regular season, and none of them were close. Number 8, Kansas State, 49-25. Number 7, Colorado, 44-21. Number 10, Kansas, 41-3. And then coming right off of a game against our rival Oklahoma, where we shut them out 37-0, with just a dominant display by the defense, just not letting them do anything.
Right.
But that's as good a game as I think that in the Big 8, Big 12, Big 6, whatever it was that we had at that time. that was as good a game as I'd ever seen. That they just hammered Oklahoma, and Oklahoma at that time, rebuilt every year. That just reloaded every year, I should say, just like Nebraska was at that time. So they were a very good team, but to beat a team like that, and shut them out, that really gave the guys a whole lot of confidence.
Well, and it was truly a defensive dominated performance too, and that was what was so unique about this team. Was not only were we very physically dominant offensively, this was a team that averaged 400 yards a game rushing the football, and like you said, they beat 3 top 10 teams during the regular season, but then they beat Florida. So there was actually 4. It was Kansas State, Colorado, Kansas, and Florida. So so you had a team that was from a league that had 4 top 10 teams. So 4 of the top 10 teams were all from the Big 8.
Right.
Okay.
Half the conference.
And half the conference, exactly. And then you beat Florida in the championship game, in dominant fashion with over 500 yards of rushing. And over 620 or 630 total yards in the entire game. And frankly, Tommy threw 2 picks. He played like crap as a quarterback. He played phenomenally as a leader and as a runner, running our option-based system. But his throwing numbers, I think he was like 6 of
15.
6 of 15. I mean, can you?
Wow.
We complain about our quarterbacks today, but Tommy wasn't any better as a thrower.
No.
Yeah. What's interesting, though, because I rewatched that whole Oklahoma game before all this, and the offense did struggle in that game, because half of our points in that game were just off of pick sixes by the defense, because the defense was just so freaking amazing. But offensively, Oklahoma's speed was able to kind of catch up with our option style of play. So I think that did leave a little bit of doubt going into this game against a talented Florida team. And in the first quarter, it was kind of a back and forth affair. I believe Florida was up 10-6 because they blocked one of our extra points. So, in the first quarter, they kept throwing to that Donahue guy, just connected to him over and over again. So first quarter, it was, kind of a battle between the two sides. But after that, the remaining 3 quarters was all Nebraska all the time. and they ended up having negative 28 rushing yards just because of how many times we pushed them backwards.
Well,
Yeah.
and here's what's so significant about that is people were so sure that Florida was not only a good football team but one of the top two. That after that game, after that shellacking, Florida remained number 2, and the reason is because the number 3 team was Tennessee, and the number 3 Tennessee Volunteers had been beaten by Florida 62-37. So I mean, the reality is that it was one of those things, a little bit like people feel about this year. Now we fast forward to 2020 with Clemson and Alabama seemingly being so much better than everyone else around them that they're clearly the best 2 teams kind of thing, and that's what people think. But obviously we'll see what plays out there. But it was just amazing that this team was able to do the things that they did, and they did it like another commentary that I had forgotten about during the game was. This was in the third quarter, AJ, and Mike Rucker and, gosh, I'm trying to think of who the other young man was, but who was a sophomore at the time and was our third-team defensive end, and a linebacker who was a third-team linebacker had sacks on back-to-back plays of Danny Werfel, and they were the third-team players playing in the third quarter.
Right. Yeah, well,
that was I do remember that. That was pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of that linebacker's name, and I can't think of it either.
The depth was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I think that goes also to coaching at that time there too. I mean, the guys were used to having to put in their time.
Yes.
Whereas today, shoot, if they aren't playing by redshirt freshman year, they're looking to transfer.
Right. Well, right. Well, or yeah, exactly.
Right. But and we talked about that yesterday. Dad and I did a little bit. It took years to get to that point, though. Years of Tom Osborne, building up the reputation of the program. Constantly getting to the Big 8 conference championship, right, and competing for being in the mix for national championships and things like that. So, then the seniors who are playing well and have proven success on the field get the respect from the younger guys, and where we are right now as a Nebraska team is that the seniors can't command that respect because they've just had 4-win seasons, back to back to back or whatever.
Right.
Right.
Well, but getting back to the subject of the 96 team or the 96 game and the 95 season was just the the statistics are obviously very impressive. A couple of others that come to mind that were stated during the pregame of the broadcast was, that offensive line gave up 0 sacks for the entire season, not one.
No kidding. Yeah. I did not know that.
Yeah, I know.
Holy cow!
I had forgotten.
How is that possible?
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is.
And then what else? Then just the 400 yards rushing per game to me, when you think about what that means, because we obviously had great rushing teams and won the rushing title many years during the Osborne era, but I don't know that we had ever run for 400 a game.
Right.
And we were doing it against top-notch competition too. That was the thing that really made it special. Was it's not like we were playing a weak schedule. And that's what made that team so special. And they just had a single-mindedness, and they talked about the love of team and how that was like the pinnacle of Tom developing that. And then that maintained, frankly, even through the 96 season where they had the disappointing loss down at Arizona State, and then they came back all the way to where if they had won in the championship, the Big 12 championship against Texas, they would have been competing for another national title. As it turns out, they lost that game. But that love of team carried all the way through to the end of Tom's time after the 97 championship was done. So it was just it was an amazing thing. And you listen to those guys talk, also matter of fact, also mature and really understanding the concept that, the fun and the joy is in being excellent and having success. that game day and winning on game day was the single most important thing to having fun playing football. And those guys had a blast playing football, right? But they were intensely competitive in everything they ever did. We rewatched a portion of a video that I have called Reflection on Perfection, and they show a snippet of Aaron Taylor and another offensive lineman who I can't remember, and then Grant Wistrom and Christian Peter playing doubles in tennis at the hotel before the game, and it was hilarious. But you could tell the incredible intensity and competitiveness of each one of those athletes.
Yep, it was black shirts versus O-line.
O-line, yeah. And it was awesome. And yet they all loved it. They all had a great time.
Right. And you'll remember as well from some of that pregame stuff that it was just 4 days after the victory against Oklahoma and that kind of Thanksgiving break that Tom called the players back and to start prepping for the bowl game. And that was a change, from past years where he had let there be more of a break. I mean, he felt that had played a factor in some of their bowl losses. Also a big factor was that this bowl game was the Fiesta Bowl, not the Orange Bowl, whereas in so many of the past bowl games over the 90s, right, we're at the Orange Bowl against Florida State or Miami or Florida, so they basically get a home game at the bowl, whereas this one being out in Arizona, the stadium was like 70% red, and this just rocking, and Florida could even hear their own play calls.
It was a better field, too. I mean, Pete can tell you that it didn't just go into the 90s. It was in the 80s, throughout the 80s, and probably even before that, because we were attached to the Orange Bowl for so long, and we played in that year after year after year, it seemed like, and that place was nothing but painted sand by that time of the year. It was terrible. That was a terrible field, and there was a lot of kids that got hurt.
Yep.
And they just couldn't. They were used to playing pretty much on good grass or playing on turf, and they just couldn't get their fit. So every year it seemed like we were playing an away game on a crappy field, and it seemed to get us every doggone year throughout this. I don't really remember the 70s that much, but I do, except for maybe midway through the 70s and beyond. But there was a lot of years where we played down there, and it was terrible.
I agree completely. And that field at Florida at the Fiesta Bowl was bad, but it was nothing like the Miami Orange Bowl field, which you're right was painted sand and ridiculous. And then they always had those massive halftime performances, and I remember the year in '83 when Tom went for two and lost. One of the big controversies before the game, because Tom, who is usually fairly compliant as a person, I mean he tries to do the right thing and get along and all that sort of stuff. He was livid, angry, before the game because they had this massive Orange Bowl halftime show, and it included elephants. I'm not kidding you, live elephants. And so they had practiced the halftime show, and then Nebraska went on the field to practice, right? And there were huge, massive divots and torn up things for where these elephants were, right. And he was livid, right? And he's like, "That's got to get fixed." And of course, they painted it. The thing was a trash heap the whole game. And so we had some serious issues with being able to run an option offense where you're wanting to plant and turn on an option, to go get around the corner. You can't do that. And if you know the field and you're a wide receiver, you know the spots to go to and turn, and then have the defensive back slip on the sand that's right in front of him, that type of thing. So there's a huge home field advantage when you have a field that is that shitty.
Right. I hadn't heard about the elephants before. That's pretty funny. One last note on the overall season stats, like you were mentioning earlier, about 400 rushes per game, 7 yards per attempt on average. And it says that we averaged more than 50 points per game, even though Frazier didn't even complete 100 passes on the season.
Right.
So it just shows you how often we were just running it, and it was working.
Right.
Beating teams by an average of 38.7 points per game.
Well, okay, so that's gonna be a great transition. And AJ, I'll let you make comments after I do mine because I think you'll have some. And that is, let's talk philosophy. Okay, Tom Osborne viewed his option-based offense. He viewed the option as a pass. Okay, he said that's our short passing game. Okay, he thought nothing of running an option play on a 3rd and 7. Okay? Mm-hmm. That was our passing game. That was our short passing game. That was our ball control, get first downs, passing offense. Okay? So when people asked him, about why he didn't throw it more, it was a philosophical thing where he understood the value of getting numbers, getting the team that he was playing against in bad situations where they were outnumbered, and then taking advantage of that, right? And when you run an option, that's what you're doing. You're basically removing a guy from your blocking mechanism. I'm not going to block that guy. I'm going to option him. So I'm going to bring a runner at him, and that defender is going to have to make a choice: tackle me or tackle the pitch man, right? But he can't have both, right? So if you run it properly. So you have effectively made it 11 on 10. And that is so important to his system. And so there was philosophies like that. And that's just one of many. And in this game, it was the pinnacle of how he approached his relationship with his players, how they practiced, which was very intensely and violently. Okay, they were not afraid to get injuries during practice because they had depth. And it was next man up. If somebody got hurt in practice, which happened, well, it was the next guy. And his job was to step up and be as good as the guy before, right? And that's what happened. So yes, they had great strength and conditioning. Yes, they had nutrition system that was top of the line, all that sort of stuff. And those were great advantages that they had. But by the mid '90s, most teams had caught up for the most part with Nebraska in some of those areas. But what they didn't have was they didn't have the level of execution, and they didn't have that commitment to excellence and that tiered leadership from senior down to freshman, right, of understanding your place and how you had to work your way up the ladder, so to speak. And none of that exists in our current program. And that's what Scott's talking about when he talks about trying to get old and stay old. But I'm not sure he's doing it exactly the way he should be. But I know he understands that because he was part of that. Okay, he understands that. What he doesn't get is, I think he's going at it from the philosophy of his offensive system versus Tom's, and that's part of the problem. But anyway, I just think there's some tremendous philosophical things there that you learn when you listen to those players, during interviews, and it's like, God, that's what we're missing.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your thoughts on all that, AJ?
Well, he hit it depth. It was. The guys knew that they had to earn their way, up. And we had so much good depth that we didn't have guys leaving all the time. We didn't have, problems with players and things. When they did, they were corrected rather quickly, normally. It was a whole different deal where they don't have it now. I mean, shoot, we don't even have a too deep.
Right.
I mean, it's
yeah.
So it's pretty hard on him to try to get things going. But I don't know. It's back then. I'm not sure if in the mid 90s, did we still have a bigger scholarship?
Yes, we had
situation?
95 versus 85. So we had 10 more scholarships. But the thing, AJ, is that you know who our wide receivers were during that game?
It didn't matter unless they could block.
It was Reggie Ball, Brendan Holbein. I mean, we didn't have a star, and Clester Johnson. Those were our three wide receivers. Okay, now Clester was a recruit, a scholarship player. But Holbein and Reggie were walk-ons. And then our punter, Jesse Cush, who became an All-American, was a walk-on. And then I'm trying to think of who else. Oh, Vanden Bosch. Kyle Vanden Bosch.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
played a long time in the NFL too.
Yes, he did. But I mean, it was just a whole different deal when you were dealing with walk-ons like that. And then when you think about the second teamers and the third teamers, especially along the offensive line, it was littered with walk-ons who would play a few snaps a game. Maybe they would start for half a season while a scholarship player earned his way. Right now, what happens to us? We either play those scholarship kids when they're young, and we live with their failures and their learning process, or they quit, or they get disillusioned and they don't keep trying. They don't keep fighting. The perseverance aspect of this is so fundamental, and all of those guys talk about it. Heck, Damon Benning, who's obviously a very successful radio personality in Nebraska now, he talks quite openly about the number of times that he wanted to quit, and his roommates talked him out of it because he was in a running back room where he knew he was good enough to play for most places, and yet there he was sitting fourth on the depth chart, and then he finally gets his chance. He plays for a couple of games, gets hurt, and then Amon Green is behind him, and the rest is history.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Game's over on that one.
Right.
One interesting thing to watch in this game was just the, that good old-fashioned play calling that we all love from Tom Osborne and from the rest of the coaching staff. It's just obviously a very well-prepared game plan. You mentioned, Dad, that you remembered from the radio broadcast that after the first quarter when Florida scored their touchdown and they were up 10-6 and we were losing, he said to everybody on the radio, like, don't worry, everybody. I've seen enough to know we're going to dominate this team. You know, we're winning in the trenches. It's going to be all right. Very much turned out to be true. And there were certain things like we noticed where Tom called a QB draw for Tommy, and he would go out to the outside, to try to beat guys to the edge a couple times. And then later on, in like the third quarter or fourth quarter, we ran it where he just waited for half a second and then just went straight up the middle. And there was a giant hole, and he went right for a touchdown.
It was the same play call. We went out to 5 wides, and the first few times we did it, we ran it with a blocking scheme to run it to the outside, and Tommy had some success on those 2 plays, AJ. And then in the third time we ran a trap play, and Aaron Taylor, the left guard, just nails this guy in the ear hole and opens up the frickin' Red Sea. And Tommy just waltzes into the end zone 50 yards.
Yep. Or on the defensive side of things, we noticed the zone blitz, how our defensive coordinator had kind of brainstormed that, and he may not have been the very first person to use it in college football, but he was one of the first.
Yeah, I think it was the first time it was ever used. The zone blitz scheme in college football was during that game. Nebraska had never used it before, and at that time the zone blitz was a newer concept that was just starting to be used by none other than Monty Kiffin at Tampa in his Tampa 2 defense, that it was winning Super Bowls.
Right. And it was very clear that their offensive line didn't know what was going on. And we got 7 sacks on their quarterback, including 1 safety.
Well, most of those sacks, our guys unblocked, not touched. Okay, they didn't even know what was going on. Their offensive line, their heads were spinning.
Yeah, and I was also surprised that they had mentioned the pregame that Florida's special teams wasn't great, and that their field goal kicker had missed a lot that season, things like that. But that really did turn out to be a big factor because there were a lot of series where we were starting it on our own 40 or further up the field just because they would get bad punts or our defense was just pinning them deep. So we were winning the field possession war regularly. So that turned out to be a pretty big factor as well.
AJ, do you have any comments? We still got you?
No, you guys have covered it, man.
Okay. Well, but now here's something I want you to say, because this was a subject of Alex and I as we were watching the game last night too, which is that they have a or we had a tradition of being the top special teams in the country, or at least one of them every year. We always had a great kicker. We always had a great punter. And typically we had a darn good return guy who was solid, if not spectacular, going all the way back to Johnny Rodgers, frankly, in the 70s, early 70s. But as I look at our special teams, they were phenomenal. And they were just always so well thought out. Like in the second half, we had a punt return set up where when we would stop them on their own side of the field, where they were punting up near their own goal line or whatever, so the risk of them running a fake was virtually zero, we would have 3 guys back to catch punt, because Tom had a philosophy that he'd never wanted the ball to touch the ground on a punt. Right? He wanted you to catch it, even if it was a fair catch. It was to be caught. And I'm looking at that, and it made all these memories flush back to me about how important kicking game. Tom didn't even call it special teams. He called it offense, defense, and kicking game.
Yeah, I didn't remember that at all. That they were that good. I remember having kickers because they always had. Seems like they've always had a kicker.
Yeah,
and I didn't remember the rest of that. That's pretty impressive. You can do all three. You do all three phases of the game properly, and you're going to win a good percentage of your games.
Oh yeah.
And so he knew that, and, and then you just repeat. Just keep doing it. Keep doing it exactly the way you've been doing it. And
Dan Young
works out.
Dan Young was the assistant offensive line coach and the special teams coordinator for Nebraska, and he was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just going back to the stats again real quick, we did end up having 524 rushing yards total off of 68 attempts, whereas they had negative 28. Passing yards, they had 297. Whereas we had 105, and Tommy threw 2 interceptions, both of which were on 3rd and longs, where he was clearly trying to force something he shouldn't have been, and honestly, ugly interceptions.
That's what I was going to say, Alex. They were ugly.
Yeah, they were. But then Tommy gets his amazing runs where he's just making guys fall off him, over and over again. Yeah. And I saw this fun quote as I was doing my research, which I thought was pretty good. This is from James Bates, a Florida linebacker. He said, we saw in the film that when Nebraska ran a lot of non-option plays, teams were there, but they just couldn't make the tackle. Danged if that didn't happen to us too. Because there were like the famous Tommy Frazier one where he just breaks through like 5 guys and runs 70 yards for a touchdown. I mean, it was kind of some bad tackling on Florida's part, but also, that's us tiring out their defense over the course of a game.
Exactly.
They just got tired.
Yeah, it's those dive plays. It's trying to tackle, a monster like Lawrence Phillips and a speed power guy like Amon Green, and eventually that wears on you, and you just don't have it. Even if you're there, you're not there.
Right. Or even you'll remember that one great Lawrence Phillips run, which we rewound a couple times, where he makes some great plants to make guys miss, and is just shifting his body so well, and just goes along the sideline for a touchdown. Speeds away once he gets past 3 guys or whatever.
If that guy didn't have his head wrong and chemistry wrong in his brain or whatever, God, he could have been something.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing, Pete. That he was just tremendous, and he had a natural instinct like OJ and like Dickerson, and I just his head was just too messed up.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. The whole game as well, we had 1 4th down, which we didn't convert, and then we punted it 1 time, and that was it. Every other time.
And on that punt, they fumbled the punt, and we got it.
That's right.
They muffed the punt.
That's true. They did. And I guess there were the 2 other drives where we threw the interception. So there were, I guess that's 4 drives where we didn't get points.
Right.
Every other drive we got points. So that's pretty good, I'd say.
You know what else I loved, AJ? And this is something I talked about earlier this season. Okay, they had all kinds of time between plays, and they would pan the camera to Tom, and he's surrounded by 2 or 3 wide receivers, and a couple of them take the play and they run out there. And Tommy waits for those guys to get to the huddle. They huddle up. The play gets transferred, and Tommy sends them up to the line of scrimmage, and they run the play. And I'm thinking, you know what? All this stuff about, somebody stealing our signals and, the claps instead of the snap to center and all that kind of crap. I tell you what, if you think that's happening, then run your wide receivers out there with the play in the old school way and see if all of a sudden you start having more success. That might give you a pretty strong indication that your signals are getting stolen.
Yeah, we talked about that in a previous podcast, that we thought that exactly that they just, they need to get rid of the clapping and the, all that kind of baloney and just run a guy out there. It's easy enough to do. I mean, they know what they're doing. So
exactly. And if you're struggling offensively, slow it down, make those kinds of changes, get the ball rolling in the right direction, and then go back to your signals. Why not do it that way?
Yeah. The other funny thing, when they would show Tom on the sidelines, like you're saying, sometimes talking about his wide receivers, most of the time he was just standing there chewing his gum with this placid expression on his face, whereas every time they cut to Steve Spurrier, he had his hands in his face,
grimacing,
and just making these funny faces, and it was clear he was being outcoached and outpowered, and he didn't know what to do.
Right.
Yeah. And I know he said as much in the post-game interview as well.
That was the classiest thing I ever saw him do, was his post-game. He basically admitted that he got his hand handed to him in every which way and was just dumbfounded. He's like, I have no answer.
All right. So let's go back to some memories here. Nebraska wins 62-24, shocking the country with how dominant they were. I don't think anybody expected it to be that dominant.
Right.
So what did you guys do? How did you celebrate on that day and the days to come after? I was we were living in Anchor Point, Alaska at the time, and I stayed up all night long rewatching the game, parts of the game, and ESPN, after that, and listening to all the people eat crow. That's what I did all night long. It was amazing. It was amazing because they all had to come on and say, hey, this grass thing, we were completely wrong. That's the most impressive team that we've ever seen, and la-da-da. They just kept going, and I just kept watching it. I watched it all damn night long, and I don't think I went to sleep till early in the morning the next morning.
You know what's funny, AJ? That's exactly what I did.
It's like your brothers.
It's exactly what the only difference was, Alex, I was building Alex. We had a big, huge wood play structure that I was building for Alex. He was 2 years old, and I was in the process of building. I was almost done, right? The platform was there. The slide was in place. I was just doing some finishing touches on the swing set part of it and everything. But I had a bunch of spare wood out there from, the remnant wood. And I went out there and started throwing that wood around. Just throwing it up in the air, just with celebratory energy. Right after the game was over, I was just so giddy. And my neighbor, I made so much noise that my neighbor got up. And then a few weeks later, he said, hey, the other night you were out there. I was a little worried about you. I didn't know what was going on, so I explained it all to him. He said, so that's Nebraska fireworks then. So now I have a piece of wood that he carved for me that says Nebraska fireworks on it, and it's a piece of 2x4, womanized 2x4.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, it was funny. We did watch a little bit of the ESPN post game, and they did the recap of the game, showing the big highlights, and the commentary over it was very sarcastic. Oh wow, they got another one on them. Well, look at that. It was pretty funny. I have to say. And so, of course, I think then this transitions us nicely into that. The discussion of whether this 95 Nebraska team really was the greatest of all time. When you look at the lists that people make of the greatest college football teams of all time, that 95 team is always in the top 5 somewhere. But a lot of people also rank the 1971 Husker team up there in that top 5 too. And sometimes I've seen it where sometimes the 95 team's over 71, sometimes it's the opposite.
Right.
So what are your guys' thinking on that? Why do you think the 95 team is even better than that 71 team?
Well, obviously, whenever they do these best of all time things, you're comparing different eras with different sets of rules and different strength and conditioning and all that sort of stuff, and the game continues to evolve. So best of all time is a very difficult thing to describe, but I think that I would choose the 95 team for a number of reasons. The first of which is something we've talked about quite a bit on this podcast already, which is the depth. For a team that was dealing in the scholarship limit era, okay, only 95 scholarships versus back in 70 and 71 when we won those championships, I don't think there was any limit. You know, basically a school could sign as many scholarships as they wanted, okay?
Right.
And so they had depth. I'm not saying they didn't, but if you look at the depth of really phenomenal talent, I think the 95 team just had more of it, right? And back in the 70s, you still had Oklahoma. I mean, that game of the century from 71, that Oklahoma team was incredibly talented with Jack Mildren and all those guys, and the Selman brothers, and I mean, they just had ridiculous talent on an Oklahoma team. But we had Larry Jacobson, and it was just, there was some really incredible Johnny Rogers frontline talent. But I don't know that as many guys, depth players, second teamers and third teamers, I don't know as many of those were a factor in the 70 and 71 teams. It was really those frontline players that were spectacular, right? Whereas in 95, I think part of the essence of what made them so incredibly good was they could just roll. I mean, entirely, I was talking about this. They would replace the entire offensive line. They would, in the middle of a game, they would put the entire second string offensive line out there and let them kick ass. And you just don't see that. So that's what I thought made the Nebraska team so special, or 95 one. And that's just comparing those two. I know your question's bigger than that.
Yep.
But I'll let AJ
respond
to that.
Yeah, what do you think, AJ?
Yeah, I agree with Pete that it was a deal where they had such depth in 95. And you can't, like Pete said, you can't really compare the two different eras. There's quite a bit of difference, 20 plus years in between. It's completely different era, different strength and conditioning, all kinds of things were different. But I think overall the talent level at a 95 team was quite a bit better than that 71 team. I just barely remember very little about the 70, 71 teams. I was 11 years old at the time, 12 years old. And I remember, that was just normal. That's Nebraska football. That's just normal. They win every game, don't they? That's what I remember from being.
True, must be nice.
No,
it
he's
was.
right.
It was like,
Well, and it was through the 70s, man. When we would lose a game, the whole state went into mourning because it happened so rarely. It was like everybody's at half mast on the flags, and it was like a day of mourning.
All right. Yeah, well, and I agree with you guys, of course, of all the reasons you said the 95 team is better. I do think it's impressive looking at the 71 schedule, just how dominant the defense was in that era.
Yes.
You look at the points the other team scored. It's 7, 7, 7, 6, 0, 0, 13, 7,
right.
0, 17, 3, 6. The only one that was close was that Oklahoma game.
Right.
Alex, they had a defensive line that was exceptional.
Oh,
and I'm trying
crazy.
to think of the fella's name. Was it Rich Glover?
Rich Glover, yep. And Larry Jacobson.
Yeah. And Larry Jacobson. Those guys were amazing.
They were.
And they could play, I'm sure if they were teenagers now, they could get onto a squad. And just from being able to go through what kids can go through now and lift and everything, they'd still be great players.
Oh, yeah. I remember about Rich Glover. I mean, he had a wingspan that was just massive, right? And so he seemed bigger than he even was because his shoulders were very broad and he had these big arms and he would just, I mean, you just couldn't get away from him, right? He was just everywhere because of that.
Yep. One other team I saw getting mentioned quite a bit was the 1972 USC team, which also had an undefeated season, and they played a bunch of top 25 teams in their schedule. But I think we could go into the same discussion we just had about the difference of the era.
Yeah, and I wouldn't put them even in my top 5.
Okay, fair enough.
That's my
feeling. Was that a McKay team, Pete?
Yes, I believe it was John McKay. Yep. It might have been Robinson's first year, or second year or something, but I think it's still McKay.
Okay. Then another one gets brought up a lot, and this is closer in era, and we played against them, was the 2001 Miami team that had a ton of talent that went to the NFL. And they beat a bunch of top 25 type teams, with dominant point spreads, and then played against Nebraska in the Rose Bowl and beat them 37-14.
Right.
So what do you guys think about?
We were there, Alex.
We were there, yeah.
What do you guys think about that team?
That was a game, or that was a team that, like you said, I believe that team was more talented than 95 Nebraska. Okay, they were more talented, but what they weren't was as consistent. And as far as being able to do all of the elements of a football team, their quarterback on that team, I don't think was all that great. I think he won the Heisman Trophy, but I still viewed him as kind of not the difference maker that he could have been. And I feel like, because they are close enough in era, if that 95 Nebraska team played the 2001 Miami team, I believe that the Nebraska 95 team wins. Just because of the dominance, we would have taken away some of their greatest strengths. Because they had an absolutely ridiculous defense too, okay? But they had never faced the physicality. They were playing in that southeast area, and they didn't play the physical teams of the Big 8 or the Big 10. And I just think that would have been a big adjustment for them.
Yeah.
But they, in my opinion, are the most talented team of all time. Mm-hmm. But we're the best team.
Right. And one other thing I saw was that that was like the first year of that coach's first year was that particular year. So he kind of inherited all this talent
from Jimmy Johnson.
Right. And they had some dominant victories, like there's one here against number 14 Syracuse 59-0.
Right.
But then there are some like against number 14 Virginia Tech where they only won by 2, 26-24, or earlier on in the season, where was it? There against Boston College, they won 18-7.
Yeah.
Whereas the Nebraska 95 team smoked everybody.
The closest victory we had was a 14-point victory, I think, in the second game of the year against
it was against Washington State.
Yeah.
And it looks like it was like the fifth game actually, but
game.
The 14 points was the biggest, the closest anybody got.
Right. All of our top 20 wins, we won by 20 plus points.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't close.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts to share on that Miami team, AJ?
Yeah, I just, they were, just like Pete said, very talented. And while we were watching the game, you could see throughout, I only saw the first half. I couldn't take it. And they were just dominating. I mean, they looked really, really good. You talked about the Heisman there, Pete. I think, wasn't that the year that our guy won the Heisman?
Oh, you're right. It was. Eric Crouch was the Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah.
So but I'm wondering if maybe that quarterback was a junior or something or sophomore and
got it the next year.
Came back and got it the next year. But I just remember him not being that overwhelmingly impressed by their offense, and because it relied so much on that quarterback, and I thought, well, he's good, but he's not great. Their wide receivers were just ridiculous. And we could not
and their
cover
tight
them.
end. They had a tight end that was just killing us.
Yes.
Just killing us.
Yes.
They had a bunch of NFL players. I mean, they had a bunch.
Yeah,
I don't know how many it was, but there were some, and not just, guys that made it to the league. They had guys that made it to the league and made it big in the league.
Oh yeah, Ray Lewis and I mean they had They had so many guys. The safety was ridiculously good and will be in the NFL Hall of Fame. And yeah, I'm going to guess that team probably has 4 Hall of Famers, if not 5.
That Miami team definitely was talented, that's for sure. But the last team I wanted to talk about was the 2004 USC team. A lot of the lists had them pretty high up too. And look at their schedule. Once again, they're undefeated, and they had a very dominant victory in the national championship game against Oklahoma, who was number 2, 55-19. Though kind of similar to that Miami team, they did have some games that were closer, like against Stanford, they won 31-28, or Cal 23-17. So they had some closer games in there, as well as some really dominant ones, where they crushed the teams they played. Another talented team, that was the Reggie Bush team, I'm pretty sure. So that kind of that era. But do you guys have any additional thoughts on that team?
Again, I think that team had some incredible individual talent, NFL caliber talent. But again, collectively as an entire team, I don't even think they're close. I think the 2001 team is arguably from Miami is arguably a good or a close comparison, but I would not view this USC team as close. They're obviously very, very good, and they were very dominant. But like you said, some of their games, if you watch those games, you wouldn't look at them and say, okay, that compares with what my eyes told me when I was watching Nebraska just crush everyone that they faced.
Right.
And again, it gets back to our schedule then, right? When you're doing comparative schedule strengths, Nebraska's schedule strength that year was tremendous, and we dominated that schedule. It wasn't just, whereas USC, that was in the era of, playing in a Pac-12 that was watered down, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any thoughts from you, AJ?
No, he hit it. Other than the Reggie Bush, and then their quarterback went on to be an NFL quarterback also.
Yes.
I can't think of his name, but he was pretty doggone good. But other than those two, I just don't really remember much about that team at all. They won a national championship, but that was all tainted because of the. Reggie was getting paid during that whole thing and everything.
Living with the quarterback in a high rise, $1,800 a month apartment.
Right. So I don't know. I just don't think that they're anywhere in the ballpark with the other teams that you spoke of, Alex.
Right.
All right. I think that's fair. So I think we've gone through a short analysis here to determine that yes, indeed, the '95 Husker team is the greatest of all time.
Absolutely,
it's
and
definitive.
Unbiased analysis.
Yes, definitely.
Did you think it was going to come out any differently?
No, but this is for the listeners, so we presented our evidence as to why it is the case.
That's right.
It would be interesting to see, and I've never seen it. Maybe you guys have, if they've actually done a strength of schedule comparison on all what some people think are the best teams all time. They actually.
Yes, they have done that, AJ. I mean, there's been a few articles and where they've done that over a period of time. ESPN's done it, some things like that. And until recently, I would say, and there's always a recency bias on any of those kinds of things. Nebraska '95 has been at the top. In fact, on the ESPN one, I think Nebraska '95 was number 1, and Nebraska '71 was number 2.
If you're talking about like the 150, the 150 years of college football list they did, it was actually, I think it was, because I just looked at that, I think it was actually the 71 team was number 1,
and then
95 was like number 4, I think, or something like that.
Okay, interesting. But yeah, just the fact that we are fans of a program that has what most people who are in the industry and who would be considered, experts in the field of the history of college football would say that 2 of our teams are in the top 5 all-time of greatest football teams of all time, says something about the program and the consistency that was going on through that 40-year period starting with Bob Devaney in the early '60s, until the end of the end of the century.
Yeah. Yep. Though to that point, there was something that Tom said in one of the pregame interviews that I watched, which I thought was fun, was they were asking him about, like repeating national titles and the historical significance of that and, that sort of thing and how that was affecting the team. And he was like, oh, really, for these players, they don't really care much about beyond what they had for breakfast this morning. They don't really focus on the history or whatever. They're just looking at the next game and planning on winning it, And I think that's a good truth that speaks to today as well. And that, it's great that Nebraska is a dominant football program of so many decades, but it's more about what have you done for me lately? And lately, Nebraska hasn't been so good. So kids' memories are short.
Right.
Yeah. But I think that leads us nicely into just our final topic, which will just be talking a little bit about college football throwdown. This is just a humble little podcast Dad and I decided to do back in summer of 2015 after I graduated college because we wanted to kind of set something up. I had been doing a podcast at school about anime and things like that with my friends that I really enjoyed doing. And so I had some experience, and we wanted to get something together since I'd be moving to LA and being apart from dear old Pops here. But this was a good way for us to still hang out and talk about our shared love of college football. And I know we've had some times where we've gone kind of dark during the off season and things like that, but we've kept consistent talking about each season and the different things going on nationally, like when the playoff got started and Nebraska's placed in the Big Ten and the recruiting rules changing, et cetera, targeting, all sorts of stuff. So we talk about some of those more broad national topics too, and we've made it all the way here to episode 100 here in the year 2020, right at the end.
Right.
So Dad, what are some of your favorite memories or particular moments that you remember from past podcasts?
Well, the thing is I want to say something about why we did it. Even during all the years before we did the podcast, it was kind of our tradition to have a pretty good father-son discussion where I could get as animated and as loquacious as I wanted to.
That's one word for it.
As on the subject of Nebraska football and what we were doing right and what we weren't doing right, and sharing my passion with my son, and that's really what the whole crux of this was. And then when we were recognizing that the next phase in Alex's life was about to begin, where he was going to embark and go off to California and pursue his Hollywood dream. And so, I said, well, let's do this. And at the time we thought, we had a vision that maybe someday, a lot of people would want to listen to this. And we have a few regular listeners, if you will, mostly relatives and friends. But the reality is that, it's been a therapeutic thing, and it's been something for us to continue to build, a shared bond that we do. So just that element is what's most valuable and why I so enjoy doing it and looking forward to doing it. It's also neat that, like you just rattled off, I mean, you think about the amount of change just since 2015 that we have been able to discuss and observe both in the sport and specifically for Nebraska football. And we've been able to lament and struggle with what Nebraska has had to go through. And all I can say is I'm looking forward to a day that I hope is not too far into the future where we do turn that corner and we are competitive again, and we can get excited, and you can begin to enjoy some of the more successful experiences of having a team that's competitive and has a chance to do something special. So you can feel the sense of that. And you'll also feel the increased aggravation and pain when you lose, because I'm telling you, it's much easier to take a loss now than it was back then. I mean, my life was crushed every time we lost back in the 90s and even the early 2000s. And so as we were transitioning into this declining performance era, that was extremely difficult for me. As a fan, and to this day it still is something that I struggle with, but it's a lot easier to deal with the losses now because you got to accept it. I mean, we're just not where we were, but there's always the hope of next year, and that we're going to take that step and we're going to start re-climbing the mountain, because so much of what we need is still in place in Lincoln. The commitment of the fans, the resources, the passion within the entire athletic department to support those kids in everything they do to make them the best they can be. It's all in place there. There is no doubt in my mind that we are positioned to be successful if we can get the right things rolling. And I think with the tradition and the positive momentum that would happen if we began to win, I think it would just be overwhelming. I think you would see the ball roll like you would not believe once it started. And that's what I keep hoping that you're going to have that experience someday in the not too distant future.
There we go. All right. For AJ, obviously you haven't been on nearly as many of the podcasts as Dad and I, but we've had you on several different ones over the years, when you're available or when we're together, you're coming to visit California, what have you. So do you have any particular memory that stands out to you?
Well, just in general, you guys invited me to be a part of what Pete was talking about. I always took it as an honor that you guys would want me involved in it. And it was always enjoyable. I mean, even though the team stunk, we could talk, and you always allowed me to speak freely, and I've always enjoyed it, and I enjoy listening to it. So yeah, I just want to say thanks, guys.
Yeah, that's true. AJ was our first commenter, I'm pretty sure, on like our early podcast. We read what he was saying out on the air, which was fun. As for me, of course, it's been a great experience to, have a regular thing to talk to Dad about college football. And, it's kind of the whole thinking was, well, we'd kind of be doing it anyways, so why not record it and make something more official out of it? Right. And I always love the guest episodes, like the ones we would do with AJ or with Brian Clower.
Yeah, my good friend from Traverse City.
Right, Dad's friend, talking about Michigan and like Jim Harbaugh. I remember we did a podcast about that. There was one where we went to a game in Lincoln, and then we went to the library with Olivia, your daughter, Haley. My sister, and Haley, my cousin, and we did it together in the library right after the game, and that was a fun one. I also distinctly remember the one after the 2018 national title game where you were in LA for that time, and we went to a sports bar that was near my workplace, and we got to watch Clemson just crush Alabama, which was a joy. And there were Clemson fans at that bar that we talked to a little bit afterwards and everything. And I remember just enjoying that podcast because we got to celebrate Alabama's humiliation a little bit.
Right. And I remember us going to the semifinal game, again, Clemson, Alabama, down in New Orleans, in 2017. I think that was
less fun one there because Alabama kind of controlled that whole game.
But just the whole experience of that and being able to hang out in Peyton Manning's bar, and then we ended up doing the podcast, I think, in the RV, if I remember correctly.
Yep. Sure we did.
From the RV. So it's been neat to be able to do it from a lot of different locations and venues, sometimes together, most of the time apart. But it's been a connection, and it's been a lot of fun, and we look forward to continuing to do it. I love some of the ones you mentioned. They would probably fall in the category of some of my favorites as well. I'm just trying to think of any other one that would categorize as the favorite, but there have been some favorite rants, I would say, that I have had over the years that I would love, because there's so many things that, the most recent one that hasn't even been aired. I'll just dangle this one.
Preview it.
And that is that, and our brother Mike, AJ, has said this many times, who was an assistant coach at a major college football school in the Big 8, and he said, you guys wasted your lives doing what you're doing because you guys should have been football coaches because of the passion that we share and have for this game. And I always poo-poo that, but having watched this recent season, and thinking back on the number of times that I say, these are high school issues. How is it that we're dealing with this when a good high school coach knows this stuff? And I've gotten to the point now where I feel like it's true that I think in a different set of circumstances or universe, that I could have been a good football coach and coached at a high level. And even to this day, I know enough about college football that I could go and make the phone calls to 10 other coaches that I know are great coaches that are out of the game or that would be thrilled to coach at Nebraska. And I could go into there in some magical moment, become Nebraska's head football coach, and then surround myself with a staff that was tremendous. And then we'd go out there and get this thing going in the right direction. Now, it might not win national titles, but it sure as hell would win a lot more games than we're winning right now. Yeah. And that's something I used to just think was pie in the sky. But I'm now more convinced than ever that I think there's a lot of truth to it, because I'm seeing these crazy, stupid high school mistakes going on that shouldn't be happening with the resources and what's available in Lincoln.
Yeah. Well, as long as you bring AJ in on the defensive staff, I think that's where he'd like to be.
All right. Yeah, I'm all about the black shirts, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you are. And we want to give a special thank you to Kathy Nelson, who is a friend of ours from Traverse City and who designed our very nice college football throwdown logo for us by like the second episode. I think we had that rolling for us. So it's been a great effort of the full Schmitz family here and different friends to put together this podcast and keep it going for all this time, and hopefully for another 100 episodes.
That's right.
We'll have to do something extra special for 200 when we get there. So there we go. So thank you again for co-hosting with me, Dad, and for sticking with me for 100 episodes, and thank you, AJ, for being our guest on this special celebratory episode.
I'm honored.
All right. And until next time, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.
Go Big Red.